We've invested in an SEO program, or we know we need to show up in search. How have the rules changed, and how do we do that in the new world? And I'd say to SEOs what I'd say to my founders, which is,
Hey everybody, welcome back to Jolly SEO's TLDR. I'm your host, Greg Heilers, co-founder at Jolly SEO, where we specialize in earned media, having helped our clients earn over 25,000 media mentions. So if you need help getting your brand showing up in traditional search or now AI search, reach out. We'd love to be your partners in outreach. But this week, I am very excited. We have Allyson Letteri. Allyson,
thanks, Greg. It's great to be here.
it is great to have you here. Allyson, you are a GTM, a go-to-market advisor. You're the author of Standout Startup. You help early stage founders build marketing foundations that unlock real, scalable growth. Your expertise, that may sound like nice words, but your expertise was developed over 15 years leading marketing teams at companies like Intuit, Thumbtack, Handshake. So you've got a lot of experience that I'm excited to dive in and learn from you today.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
All right, so today we're going to talk about positioning and we're going to talk about demand generation. And SEO is part of that, but not all of that. So I guess, first off, very selfishly, I want to ask you, Allyson, for us SEOs, you're probably aware the last year and a half as we're closing out 2025, it's been kind of rocky for us. We had AI search come on the scene, and a lot of us are trying to redefine ourselves. Some of us as GEO or like AI search experts, and also we're just trying to fit into our clients' new plans. So, curious from your position, what do some of us who already have mature brands, how do we reposition ourselves in this?
Yes, it's such an important question, and I really feel for you. And it's a very similar question to what a lot of founders at any stage are asking themselves. We've invested in an SEO program, or we know we need to show up in search. How have the rules changed, and how do we do that in the new world? And I'd say to SEOs what I'd say to my founders, which is, I think the really good news is a lot of the same foundational elements still hold. So you need to make sure that your messaging is clear, strong, and consistent across the board. And that means very clear on the value your product provides to a specific type of customer, how you're different and better than the alternatives, and that needs to show up on your homepage, across your website, and your metadata. Also, long form content is foundational. So all of the expertise that SEOs have in researching keywords, figuring out the right content clusters for different brands, structuring content in an effective way so that search can crawl it and index it and it can show up effectively, that's still foundational. Without really authoritative, consistent content on your site or acknowledging your brand, it's hard to show up in SEO or GEO. And the third thing I'd highlight that feels very foundationally similar is just YouTube, video. Google has long favored YouTube. It's part of their brand. And today it seems that video content on YouTube is just as, if not more important to GEO. So that's the good news, this building, going from strength to strength. I think the places that everyone's trying to get smarter are places that SEOs might need to invest in figuring out, do they have all of the right expertise? A couple areas I'd call out: earned media has become more important in a GEO world because GEO tends to favor authoritative citations and it views top media outlets as very authoritative. I'd say earned media has always been a shortcut that I love for startups to use to get more SEO juice, because many times media outlet sites are very authoritative. They pour a lot into promoting their content. And so it's a great way to start to show up, especially in branded search. But cracking earned media and figuring out how that fits into the picture is a big one. Community, I think that's the hardest one to crack, but figuring out whether it's Reddit or some other authentic community where your ideal customers or the brands that you're serving, their ideal customers gather, how could we potentially pour fuel on the fire and get more engagement there? And then the last thing I'd highlight is just tracking tools. It seems that those are really changing. The tools that worked, that really helped us understand how we were performing in SEO, might not be the same ones we need in a GEO world. So let's get up to speed on those. But again, saying, I already have a strong track record with SEO, and I'm now bringing these new capabilities to make sure that you really show up in AI-aided search, I think is a really great story.
Hey, hope you're enjoying the show. We're going to get right back to it. Real quick, if you're not sure how you're showing up in AI tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and the like, click on that first link in the description. If you fill that out for us, we'll send you your own AI visibility report and see how we can help you boost your results. All right, without further ado, remember that link and enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, I'd love to dive into a couple of those. I mean, first, can't help but feel grateful that, in your opinion, branded search, earned media, we certainly felt like we caught a small tailwind there. And we'll, as SEOs, we'll take any tailwind we can get because we
Totally.
definitely face plenty of headwinds.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about community because a lot of us SEOs, but really, this isn't going to be all about SEOs, but you talked about community, and the reason I said a lot of us SEOs is sometimes we're the reclusive type, we're the solo or the more technical, but community is a huge element of building a brand. And obviously we have heard about Reddit because of the deal with Google, so we're at least aware of that. But you don't just work in SEO, and I wanted really to get your thoughts as a go-to-market advisor. There is Reddit, and we can talk about that. I used to, as Jolly's chief marketer, network extensively in Facebook groups, but to be honest, I kind of taken my foot off the gas over the past couple of years. And I've heard from other people that I'm mistaken. They're just as hot as ever. What platform are you focused on for generating awareness and demand for that?
Right. Well, the first question I always have to ask is, who is the audience that you're trying to reach? And I go into sort of 3 layers. What's the ideal customer profile? So the company type that is the best fit for your product and that you can serve the best. And then the second layer is, who's the buying committee? Who is the group of people that's going to be weighing in on the decision, and getting really clear on who's that entry point or that primary champion that's probably going to be the focus of your marketing efforts. And that sort of gives you the clues to what channels are the most important, but also who's the approver and decision maker, who are influencers, who's the end user. So we've got to really get our head around the people involved. And then that third layer really is honing in on that primary persona that we want to go after. So most of the startups I work with are B2B, and it always starts with founder-led sales. So a founder leveraging the heck out of their network and their warm connections to try to get in with the ICP company and that ideal persona. But that only takes companies so far. And so the channels that tend to be most effective and top of mind for me as I'm working with these B2B startups, first I'd say events. So where are the people you want to reach already gathering? And rarely the big wins, rarely are they going to come from the booth that you've sponsored or the speaking engagement. It's usually the events outside the events. So you're taking advantage of the fact that a bunch of people that you'd like to talk to are in a particular place. And so how are you hosting breakfasts or happy hours or workshops with a really compelling hook that isn't just come see a demo of my product, but it's learn something about the space or this problem that you're dealing with that will be super useful. And by the way, you'll get to meet us. We're experts on this topic. And of course, we're going to talk about our product at some point. So events tend to be a focus. A second area is LinkedIn in most cases. And it's really starting a steady drumbeat of organic content for the founder to establish themselves as a thought leader and an authority in this area, but also for the brand, the company, to start to establish a presence. It tends to be a long, slow road to build an organic audience, but still that content helps in search. And it also shows once a prospect's coming into the funnel, it really boosts that mid-funnel experience when they're trying to research you and they see you have this track record of engaging. And sometimes it leads to top of funnel leads. And the third thing I'd say is just earned media to boost that even more. So I mentioned it earlier, but traditional press can be hard to land for an early stage founder or company that, outside of a fundraise announcement, it's hard to get in. But lower hanging fruit tends to be podcasts. So great way to find industry specific or ICP specific podcasts that could potentially reach that audience. Contributing content to anything from Substacks to newsletters to smaller publications that have some reach. And then I would also say, just thinking more broadly about earned, how can you borrow an audience? Where are there associations, groups that are already gathering, and how might you present something to them, author something for them, give them a special opportunity? Those things tend to be faster tracks to getting in with your audience than sort of the long, slow slog of organic social, or frankly, hoping that SEO traction will come, which it might over time, but it's very rarely a quick win.
Allyson, I love that because you saw where my brain went. I was Reddit, digital. I live online, truthfully, for the most part in business. But you talked about not just going to events, but the events outside of the main event. And to be honest, the last event I spoke at, by 10 p.m., I was so wiped. And that's when everyone else down outside the hotel lobby was getting pumped to go out and party together. And I was a little bewildered. I was like, but the main event starts at 9 a.m. Like, well, how are you going to go out at 10 p.m.? And I think what you said is not just a generic, like, this is who we are, where everybody's already doing that during the day, but having something really interesting as a unique experience together. I don't know that you can plan those. I think you just need to be prepared for those organically. And I need to do a better job when I go to those events of making sure I got the physical fortitude to do the after hours and the.
Yeah. Well, you just think about how it accelerates leads through your funnel, because rather than hoping you're catching someone's attention from a cold email in their inbox, or they happen to catch your post as they're scrolling through LinkedIn, suddenly you've had an in-person conversation. It was probably consultative because you really got to understand more about what they're facing, what they're thinking about, and how your product could fit into their world. And so it just becomes a huge accelerator for a lot of startups who are really struggling to catch the attention of their ICP until they get a bit more traction. So yeah, I love what you said. Sometimes you just have to power through.
Definitely. And it actually makes for some special experiences. You form real
Yeah.
personal relationships instead of these
Agree.
somewhat cold digital. I wanted to talk about, as we get towards the end of our interview here, you have most of your expertise not just focused in our world of SEO, you're building the whole go-to-market strategy. And so I wanted to talk about, what role do you see SEO playing in that? Is that something that you're thinking about from the beginning? Is that something you layer in over time? How central is that to the whole strategy? And again, in our context, you focus on B2B startups for the most part. So I know that
Right.
would be a factor.
Yeah. So I'd say yes, I'm thinking about how do we show up in search from the beginning. And it's almost always top of mind for founders. But having a dedicated SEO GEO strategy is rarely at the top of the list. So we're thinking about the full funnel. How do we create more top of funnel awareness and interest to bring leads in? And that's the type of tactics that we just talked about a few minutes ago. But then a place where I really like founders to focus and feel that it's often a gap, or see that it's often a gap, is the mid funnel. So this idea that, okay, now you've caught someone's attention, you had a great conversation at an event, or they did read your post and they're interested. What is the experience you're pulling them into? And so that starts again with very dialed in homepage messaging, and that tends to be a gap. So that's a place where I focus with a lot of founders. But then it is what I call the capsule of content that helps someone evaluate you, better understand the problem that they have and why current solutions are insufficient, better understand your product's unique value props and very clearly why it's different and better than the alternatives. And then what are the proof points that you make very accessible to them? Customer testimonials, case studies, earned media mentions, accolades, advisors, awards, anything that proves that a third party is endorsing you. And then, of course, any data and metrics. And so we are pulling together that essential content capsule so that it's on the website. It's very easy for a prospect to access. It also creates a library of content for the sales team to access that drives momentum in the sales funnel. So they get off a call with a prospect. great. They've got the perfect article or the perfect video link or something to send that really reinforces a topic or moves them to the next stage of the conversation. So we're thinking about assets primarily that drive sales momentum. But then the great news is those are also the types of content that they're going to want to post on LinkedIn and that they can repurpose, create blurbs, link back to the main piece. It's the type of content that builds authority with earned media, and it allows a press or a podcast host or someone who might be willing to talk to you as an authority believe that you have something really unique and influential to say. And then the other piece of it is it's building the SEO GEO foundation. So this content is playing all these roles, but rather than designing it SEO and GEO first, we're thinking sales first, and then hoping that will fuel the entire funnel.
Allyson, you talked about this content capsule, and
Yeah.
my brain, while you're talking, is thinking about you see this all the time in funded startups. They need to pivot, and they need to pivot
Yeah.
fast.
Yep.
So, what are you doing in that moment? I'm sure it's a bit of a freak out, but as long as you've been in the game, I'm sure you're also like, all right, another one of these. I've done this before.
Yeah.
Are we You talked about uniformity across all the messaging. Sometimes brand names change or the main product changes. What's like the emergency playbook that you whip
Right.
out in this situation?
You're so right. This happens all the time. And I'm actually seeing it happen even more with AI startups because many times they're able to build something very quickly and they're doing what is a little bit of a product market fit no-no, which is then find the problem they can solve with that. And so they've built something, but they actually don't have a lot of clarity around exactly what type of customer is going to need this and what urgent problem are they going to be solving with it. So they are quickly iterating through who is our target customer. So really the three-step process during this period, and we have to keep it a little bit loose and light. And that's why I really like this idea of the content capsule, because we're not saying let's build out this extensive library. It's let's create essential pieces that are built with the sales process in mind, pulling prospects through, but they have this really nice knock-on benefit of they fuel our social, they give us fodder for email, and they give us the foundation for SEO GEO. Three-step process. So first, always start with what's the latest and greatest definition of your ideal customer. What is the audience? Who are we talking to? What do they care about? What outcomes do they want? What pains do they need to solve? What feels urgent to solve? Then the second step is developing a messaging framework where you have that elevator pitch. Our product is a what type of category for who, and what's the big outcome we promise. And then I like to think of 3 value prop pillars. What are the key differentiated benefits of using our product that enable that? And then what are the best proof points we have at this moment that will build credibility that we can actually deliver those benefits we just told you about, and that will really resonate with the audience, because different audiences care more or less about social proof, data, et cetera. Once you have that, then you really have your content themes, right? Most of content is helping prospects, again, better understand their problem and insufficient solutions today, better understand why your product is right for them, and then the proof points that validate that the product delivers that and that other customers are getting that value. And so this, updating messaging, doing a quick homepage refresh, and developing a couple new core pieces of content can actually happen in a couple 2-week sprints. It doesn't have to be very heavy. And I'll tell you, when you're iterating on ICPs that often, it's very difficult to start selling to a new ICP if you don't have some messaging dialed in and you don't have a piece or two of content. And so it's just got to become a natural part of that experimentation and iteration motion so that you can then get some new customers in that target audience, get them using your product, and see if there's a real fit there.
Yeah, I'm certain you have a playbook for it, because even in our short-lived podcast here, we've had a guest in between recording and publishing brand name change and everything, and
Yeah.
and so it's just
Oh gosh.
part of the reality there. As much as we as SEOs are reacting to a lot of change, entering markets right now is not a simple
Yeah.
thing, I'm sure.
Well, and early stage startups in particular have to get used to deleting content off their site too. Like, don't send an inconsistent message into the market really confuses AI, and especially companies now that are pivoting and adding AI elements to their product. Many times their old story isn't relevant anymore, so they're having to scrub messaging and content so that they're retraining AI and the market on who they are going forward.
That's fascinating. So you're kind of doing like a go-to-market part two. Are you
Right.
finding that you're reaching out to old clients and explaining this to them and saying, are you sure you don't want to redo some of our brand positioning here?
Yeah, well, they're coming back to me. So I work with a lot of early
Yeah.
stage startups, but I find that Series C, for whatever reason, tends to be the place where if a company has hit a plateau or if a competitor has done something dramatically different and maybe leapfrogged a capability, they are having to make a major pivot. And by Series C, usually the marketing team is fairly built out and people are working very hard. And so it can feel super challenging to have to, completely change the direction of the ship while doing all the things that are driving the core business. So it can be helpful to have someone like me come in and walk the team through a process or guide them through a process to define all these new pieces.
Yeah. Allison, you work in this world that largely I'm foreign to. I've had the pleasure of going to downtown SF and back in my freelance days and seeing it was a very energetic atmosphere to be in some of these startups where, they're just exploding. And it seems like I love this podcast because I get to talk to people like you who have expertise outside of my own. And my favorite question to ask, since I assume that I'm probably not asking all the best questions, is at the end here, I just like to ask a guest, what did I forget to ask or didn't even know I should have asked that you'd love to share with our audience here?
Gosh, well, we've covered so much when it comes to both establishing product marketing fundamentals, like who are we targeting, how are we better than the competition, what's our messaging, and then how do we start to think about a really smart demand gen strategy, building it from 0 to 1 that is perfectly suited to our ideal customer. I think a place I could dive a little bit deeper is just earned media and press. It's a hot topic with founders who've just gotten a lot of funding and they want to get their name out there, but it can also feel expensive and challenging to land. And so one of the things I coach them on is there are a certain set of things that really makes you attractive to the media. It is the types of information and content that they are trying to get their hands on. And so if you can position even your very early stage startup as the go-to expert on a specific topic and have any of these for what I'll call PR superpowers, you're in good shape. So one is a strong founder or leadership perspective. Are you willing to be a little bit controversial? Are you willing to say the old way is out, this new thing is in? Do you have a perspective? And I'll say not all founders are willing to put themselves out there like that, but some are, and that can be a real superpower when it comes to the media. The second is a little more straightforward, and it's just, do you have great how-to tips on how to accomplish something really effectively in your industry? And in almost every case, the startups that I work with are experts in solving a problem. And so what might seem obvious to them isn't obvious to the broader world. And so the press really likes to get their hands on that expert advice. That's a little bit different than the first category of like controversial, needle-moving perspectives. The third piece, which tends to come a little bit later, is just incredible human interest stories. So real companies or people seeing true transformation through the product that you offer. The press always wants to write about human stories. So if you can say, I was very lucky at Thumbtack, we had incredible stories about small business owners in every small town in the US. At Handshake, we had incredible stories of college students finding roles that they never would have had access to before they got us. So shared that with the media. And the fourth and last one I'll share is just data. So what data are you naturally accumulating just by people using your product, and how might you package that and create really interesting stats that would be useful to the press? Or another fast track is how can you field surveys or partner with organizations to create data-backed studies that, again, you pitch to the press, and they love to write about data all day. So when you're thinking about press, it's more than just waiting for that next fundraise announcement. It's really thinking about what could we be the go-to expert on, and which of these assets do we naturally have that we could be sure the press knows about so they want to come to us.
Well, this was amazing. Here I thought that I would hear something completely outside, but we do earned media, and you just taught me a couple different areas where we can help our clients think about the value. I think a lot of times people, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or not, but
Mm,
they just forget that they do have a lot of value inside their
yeah,
organization or in themselves, as you said, if they're willing to
right.
put themselves out there.
Yeah, and
So,
that's the right place to start. Like what do you naturally have already, and let's take advantage of that. Use what you got, I like to say.
absolutely. Allyson, this has been such a pleasure. I know people need to check out your book, Standout Startup. I also want to ask, where can people find you if they want to look you up?
Yeah, please find me on LinkedIn, Allyson Letteri, and my website, AllisonLetteri.com, also has a lot of great articles, resources, so you can find me there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and hope to see you again.
Thank you. This has been great. I appreciate it.